So the Toronto Raptors this offseason definitely haven't been as active as I wanted them to be. But obviously, they drafted Christian Coloco, they signed Juancho Hernan-Gomez, and signed Otto Porter Jr., two pretty good wings for them. Obviously, Otto Porter helping the Warriors in their 2022 NBA Finals run could provide them some good 3-and-D, here and there, but obviously, his durability and his ability to stay on the floor is definitely going to be in question. With Juancho Hernan-Gomez, he's a good three-point shooter, but someone that's going to be pretty much lacking on the defensive end. And today we're going to talk about if the Raptors are going to be legit contenders and, some worries I have for the Raptors this season. So what's up? My name is JDC. If you like what you see, drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate it. And let's get right into it. So I have this article here from RaptorsRapture.com. I'll probably post the link in the description. You guys want to check it out, but we have three worries right here for the Toronto Raptors, and going into it, the first one is a disappointing off season. So I've already talked about this, drafting Christian Coloco, signing Juancho Hernan-Gomez and Otto Porter Jr. Those are some pretty great off season moves, but in the long-term run, looking at it right now, like I said, Otto Porter, his durability, Juancho on the defensive end, is definitely going to be a huge problem. And, with Christian Coloco still being pretty raw as a prospect, what are we going to be expecting from these guys, in the next season? Because I think Otto Porter, depending on how he really plays with the Raptors, he's definitely going to be a guy that's going to be either great for them or someone that's going to be very injury prone. Juancho, if they can cover for him on defense, then I think he's going to be a pretty great player for this Raptors team. And I think they could, because with the defensive potential of this team, they could definitely cover for Juancho Hernan-Gomez or him to really just thrive on the offensive end, a good three-point shooter, like I said. But if he wants to take the next step in his game, he's definitely going to have to develop a defensive presence. So, and with Christian Coloco, obviously, I don't really know him too well, but, reading this article, it's looking like he can work on both ends. Obviously, Christian Coloco, he's a guy that the Raptors signed. I think it was either in the second round or the first round. I can't remember which round it was. But for the most part, they're bringing guys that are going to be proving themselves. And, with these three additions, I think they definitely could help him get over the hump, at least in the playoffs. So looking at the second issue, it's going to be consistency. So a lot of guys on the Raptors are going to be wanting to make the next leap. Obviously, we have guys like OG who definitely want to have a bigger active role on the offensive end. Defensively, we already know what he can do. But offensively, you have guys like Scottie Barnes, Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent, and Pascal Siakam. All these guys are able to score at least 15 points per game or more. So it's going to be very difficult to see which person or which player is going to be having more shots than the other. Because I think this season alone, it's going to be definitely beneficial for Scottie Barnes to at least be the second or the first option on scoring. He's going to be a guy that the Raptors are going to be pushing him to at least get to an all-star caliber, play style. But you also have guys like Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam who both need the ball in their hands because they're both leaders on this team. They're both, I would even say they're both in their primes right now. You guys can let me know if you agree with that. But both these guys need the ball in their hands. I think especially with Pascal Siakam, his scoring ability is definitely something you can't really take for granted. And same thing with Fred VanVleet. So obviously, guys like Gary Trent Jr. and, even OG Anunoby might need to take a step back on the offensive end. Bring in a lot of guys, like I said, with Otto Porter and Juancho, even off the bench with Malachi Flynn, Precious Achiuwa. There's a lot of guys on this roster that have a lot of potential on offense to the point where it's going to be pretty difficult to see who's going to be on offense, who's going to be playing well on offense, who the offense is going to be running through. And that's really the second issue with this team, is that there's a lot of guys that want to play offense, and it's going to be very difficult to see who are we going to be running the offense through and what's going to be happening next season on offense. So obviously defense isn't really an issue here because everyone on defense is very great. Even in the starting lineup, I wouldn't even say there's pretty much a weakness on defense here. A lot of guys can guard 1 through 5. Scottie Barnes, OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam can all guard 1 through 5. Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent both are great perimeter defenders. And overall, this team has a great mix of both offense and defense. I think it's going to come down to what Nick Nurse decides and what he's going to be able to run. So, and looking at the third issue here, the East has definitely been crowded, probably has been crowded than it ever has in the last few years. Looking at some of the teams in the East, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Miami Heat, the Boston Celtics, and the Philadelphia 76ers, I think the Sixers definitely had added a lot of pretty great players to make them, make a name for themselves as of right now. Milwaukee, obviously, they have Giannis and they have Chris Middleton, so nothing, too surprising there. Boston still have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, went to the finals. Miami still has Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, and Bam Adebayo. But also teams like Cleveland, they have, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and Donovan Mitchell, who, they weren't even in the playoff contention last year. They were in the play-in, but now I feel like they're going to have a pretty high name for themselves in the playoffs this year. I definitely have them going into the playoffs, but with this East, I mean, there's definitely a lot of pretty interesting teams that definitely could be better than the Raptors. I mean, even the Brooklyn Nets, who have a healthy Ben Simmons, Kyrie Irving returning, Kevin Durant returning. There's a lot of teams in the East that are going to be competing with the Toronto Raptors, and I don't even know if the Raptors are able to compete with them yet. Now, in the future, I definitely have them competing with them, because I obviously believe in the Raptors, with Scottie Barnes being their sophomore player and having, still Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam being around 28, 29 years old, Gary Trent still being very young, OG Anunoby, Precious Achiuwa, Malachi Flynn. The Raptors still have a fairly young team. I think it just depends on if they're able to contend right now or if they're going to be able to develop even further in the next few seasons to the point where they're going to be able to, compete for years to come. So these are my takes on the Raptors. I mean, obviously some of these might not, be that much of a worry going into the season. You guys can let me know if these are pretty much worries for you guys, but I pretty much agree with them. Like I said, I'll put the link in the comments or link in the description if you guys want to check it out. But I pretty much agree with all of these, especially with the East one. I mean, looking at all these powerhouses in the East, it's going to be definitely a very competitive year. And looking at it right now, I feel like the playoffs are definitely going to be a very interesting time for the NBA, because obviously last season, I wouldn't say it wasn't that interesting, but, in my eyes, it wasn't as interesting as, the 2021 season, basically. So let me guys know what you guys think about these. I'm out. My name is JDC, and that's the video, so peace.